So what would you say to somebody, right, that might be struggling with their message right now? Like, because, for us about a year ago, we were struggling with publishing. Like we weren't publishing like nothing at all right now. Like now we got to a point where we're publishing about 100 pieces of content a week. Like we just counted, which like, oh, that's insane, right? Like how? But like a year ago, there was zero. FONZI even deleted everything from our Instagram. So you guys cannot see our past. But it's like, okay, it took us like a second to get there. What would you say to people that are maybe in that position? What's the next step?
Yeah, so publishing is definitely a journey. Like when I initially started my podcast, Becoming a Top Performing Leader, which I'm relaunching as something different within the next month or so. But when I initially started my podcast last year, I think it was around January or so, I didn't know what to share either. And I felt also insecure and like, are people going to want to listen to me? So I literally just started sharing like what I know and my stories. It's like, okay, well, I know who my customer is and I know like what their struggles. At the time, I kind of knew who my customer was and what their struggles were. And I literally just started sharing like what was going on in my life. That I could also towards the end of the message, give some type of value of what's going on in my customer's life, and then really just look at, well, what are they going through and how can my stories relate with that? So a lot for me is just really a lot of storytelling and always making sure to somehow that story relates to whatever my customer is going through. So that's the biggest one, because even like to this day, sometimes when I write emails, I got really into doing email marketing where I email my list, at least 3-4 times a week. Everything they get from me most of the time is my stories of what I'm literally up to. And then I somehow just adjust it to what they're up to. So a few days ago, just for an example, I went to San Jose to visit family. So I wrote to my list, I said, hey, I visited my family, this and that kind of storytelling format. And this is what I got out of it. And I really got a huge piece around connecting powerfully. So I flipped that into how they should be connecting powerfully at work to get promoted. But I'm literally sharing what I'm doing. Like tomorrow morning, I'm going to write an email that I was on this podcast and how I felt about it. And then how maybe, literally. And then I'm going to flip it to, okay, what does that have to do with job promotions?
Yeah.
So especially if you're getting started or wherever you're at, if you're just sharing your story and then helping your customer with like towards the end with whatever they can get out of it. I mean, it works for me and I know it works for others as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I absolutely love, because I want to relate it to also like how we started, right? Like I love that you mentioned email, right? And we always say publish. Like what's the least frictionless publishing that you can do? For us, men, going Facebook Live. For you, you started a podcast, but now you're getting into email marketing. You're like, oh man, I really enjoy telling these stories in this format. And that's still publishing. You're communicating with your audience, which is great. What we have in common though is like the way that we publish, because you're like, hey, I'm just telling a story of what happened today. I'm gonna relate it to my business. That's literally exact same formula that we used about a year ago